Hey everybody, this is JDGaming back today with a deck profile on the first of mine since the beginning of our new Link era. And of all things, I decided let's go and see if pendulums can still work under this new mechanic, under the new board, and everything that pretty much goes against that card mechanic as a whole. And, you know, I just love Metalfoes. I usually don't go for things that are meta just for the sake of it, but I've loved Psychics since they first came out, and as a competitive Psychic deck, I wanted to give Metalfoes a shot despite the weird format. So I'd actually been testing it for a while without Link monsters, came up with a build that I kind of do like, and then most recently, you know, I tweaked it a bit, saw that you can abuse Link Spider and Honeybot in this deck because you have so many vanilla pendulums. Link Spider is really easy to turn out in this deck, and then, you know, you can consistently make plays into Mithrilium and set up for Alcahest, which is still quite a good defensive option, especially when your opponent is more restricted in how many slots they have. Alcahest actually becomes a bigger threat than it was before. Same thing with like Infinity and Ignister Prominence. You get more value out of your power plays, so I thought, why not play around with the Link monsters a bit and see if we can make something work for pendulums of all things. And then once we get Mrs. Radiant coming out next week in Code of the Duelist, I'll actually be able to go and do some fun things with Psychics and Crane as well. So definitely looking forward to that. But for now, we'll stick around with Metalfoes a little bit. So just like usual, the alphabetical profile is available at the end of the video. You can click the timestamp in the description or in the comment section down below, and that'll take you right to that. It's probably the style that you're used to, but if you've not been to my channel before, the rest of the video in the middle pretty much is a let's build of this deck. So I go through my reasoning as to why certain cards are in here, and then it'll give you some insight into how the deck functions as well. So if you're going to go to the alphabetical profile, you know, click the link, go there, and if you have any questions, feel free to come back. Otherwise, sit back, relax, and let's begin. So in case some of you guys aren't familiar with Metalfoes, I'll do a very quick overview as I explain my choices. So I play 3 of each of the Metalfoes here. Essentially, the main monsters you can see are vanillas. The ones you see on the left are scale 1. The ones on the right are scale 8. So there's a perfect balance here. And in some builds, I was thinking, you know, you could cut out Steal-In, to be completely honest, because it's not the best thing to draw. But traditionally, in Metalfoes, you want to play a max of every single Metalfoe, because that way you're able to go and use their duplicate effects. They all say once per turn you could pop any other face-up card you control, destroy it, and then you get to set a Metalfoes spell or trap, so like your fusion or whatever, right into your zone, and then you're able to continue play from there. Pre-Link era, that meant you're able to go and pop as many of these guys as possible as you pretty much have in your hand, send them all to the extra deck, and then pendulum all of them back, which lets you go and make big fusion, Xyz, and synchro summons and not lose resources. You're basically getting free fusion spells and extra, you know, utility traps for doing nothing other than just having more Metalfoes in your hand. And so it made sense to play as many of them as possible. But it's the new era. Now you have, you know, you have your one scale here, you have your one scale here. It eats up your spell and trap zones, and then you can only set 3 more cards here in between. And when you're setting cards through your own effects, things like Metalfoes fusion and stuff, you're going to end up clogging up your zones, and you can't really afford to have traps. So that was a big issue. And on top of that, if I pendulum summon, I can only summon my one monster to the one extra monster zone, and then I'm done, right? So I thought, are Metalfoes done? Like, is this it for pendulums? But I found out that's not the case. So first, I am still keeping as many of these as possible because I would like to see these cards every single game for the sake of consistency. But on top of that, I'm actually now playing 3 Bismugear. Previously, as a level 1, this wasn't something that everyone played at 3. Some people actually played this at 2. I did that as well because you can't summon this card. Scale 1 means you can't use a level 1 monster in a pendulum summon. So essentially, you couldn't bring back Bismugear, so it was subpar despite its recruiting effect. Now, you just want this because it lets you destroy another card, so it basically just adds to consistency. And on top of that, if you kill this either as a monster or as a scale, during the end phase you get a free search. And in this deck, when you have access to the quick play full Metalfoes fusion that lets you fusion summon during your opponent's turn, that lets you go and summon the fusion monsters like Alcahest that essentially are able to deal with your opponent's one threat in their extra monster zone using your one threat in your extra monster zone. So the free card you get off of Bismugear is great. And the main reason I no longer worry about, oh, well, you can't summon Bismugear is because you have so many Metalfoes pendulum monsters here that can be summoned from a pendulum summon of 1 to 8. And so if Bismugear gets popped, oh well, I get a free card off of Bismugear and I can summon any one of these guys instead. Unless I have link monsters, I'm only summoning one at a time anyway. So yes, it's a disadvantage for the Pendulum theme as a whole, but it actually means we have less emphasis on Bismugear being the card that's popped or not, because we're going to have something else most likely. So just use that free search for the plus that lets you fusion summon during the opponent's turn. We, of course, have our main fusion spells. I already talked about the quick play. That lets you set up your Alcahest play, which we'll discuss in just a moment. But essentially, Metalfoes Fusion is just a normal polymerization for the theme that lets you go and recycle this card from your graveyard into the deck, and you draw a card. So that gives you a nice bonus return on your investment there. So we just play one of each because this recycles itself, and as we'll talk in a moment, Metalfoes Mithrilium can recycle any Metalfoes card. So we're actually playing only one of each of these as well. Combination's a continuous trap that says once per turn, if a fusion monster is summoned to either side of the field, you could go and target any Metalfoes in your grave with a lower level than that monster that was summoned and special summon it. So that's cool, because if your opponent does like an instant fusion play, or they're playing Frightfurs like my brother does sometimes, then you're able to actually bring back your monsters because of that. But even beyond that, if you have a Metalfoes that's like a weak level, and you fused it from your hand so it went there, okay, well, you're probably going to be able to summon anything and bring back a Steelin or a Silvered because they're only level 2 or 3. Well, Combination also lets you go and fusion summon something like a level 8 Orichalc, and all of a sudden, your main Metalfoes fusion Mithrilium is only level 6. You can bring that back, and the cool thing about Link format is we have any card in the graveyard or wherever that's not from the extra deck can go to the main monster zone. And so Metalfoes Combination becomes really, really good at bringing back additional extra deck monsters without clogging up that one extra monster zone. So that's very useful. And then if you pop this card, or even if your opponent pops it, while it's on the field, you get to search any Metalfoes card. So it basically gives you another resource like Bismugear that lets you go and continue fusing, scaling, whatever. Counter pretty much is built just for that, in getting you those resources, because if something you control dies, even by your own effect or by battle, you can go and immediately summon out a Metalfoes, so bring out a Volflame for a 24 level 7, which is really cool. And then any turn except the turn this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish it from the graveyard, and then take one of your face-up Metalfoes Pendulum monsters, add that to your hand, and that gives you another material, again, to fuse, summon, or scale as well. While there are some other Metalfoes fusions that we'll be discussing in just a bit, this is pretty much what you're wanting to go for with that consistent engine of all Metalfoes. So Mithrilium is, again, your main monster. It's a level 6 with 2600 attack, and it says you could target 2 Metalfoes cards in your graveyard and 1 card on the field. So you recycle your Metalfoes spells and traps or any fallen Metalfoes in your graveyard, and then you get to take your opponent's card or whatever else you target, it could even be your own, and bounce it back to the hand. That lets you reuse your scales, but mostly now, because this takes up your extra monster zone, you want to use it to get rid of your opponent's threats so you can start attacking directly for massive damage with its 2600 attack. Then it also says if it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can go and special summon a Metalfoes Pendulum from your graveyard or face up from your extra deck to the field. So you can actually use her as a really good fusion material because you won't lose resources in the process. You'll get things back. She does take a Metalfoes and any Pendulum monster, so we're going to have to add some more cards that will help us consistently summon Mithrilium with the idea of, okay, have as many Pendulum monsters as possible. Alcahest lets you take a Metalfoes and any normal monster, so, tokens work, but, Metalfoes are mostly normal monsters as well, so you use those. It's got 0 attack and defense. It's only a level 1, but it's pretty much a 1000 eyes restrict as a quick effect. Must be fusion summoned, cannot be summoned by other ways, so that's unfortunate because you can't recycle it with Mithrilium or anything. But during your opponent's turn, once per turn, you could target any effect monster they control and equip it to this card as a quick effect and have this card gain defense equal to the combined original attack of the monsters equipped to it by that effect. And then any monster that you have equipped to this guy, you can actually use as materials for a fusion summon of a Metalfoes fusion monster as well. So that's really, really cool. So the whole idea is if you can get your turn to set full Metalfoes fusion face down, and then have a Mithrilium here, and then just, you have this is your Metalfoes monster, so you need any normal monster. So let's say you use Bismugear and, end phase, you get to search any Metalfoes monster. You can now get ready to, whenever your opponent does anything to threaten your Mithrilium, fuse Mithrilium with your vanilla. You get your Mithrilium and whatever sent to the grave. Get your Alcahest. Mithrilium will let you recycle whatever else as well in the process, and now Alcahest can steal your opponent's monster. And when your opponent only has 1 extra monster zone to fight you back with, it really limits what they can do against a single Alcahest. And, this thing's going to start being able to protect you from all kinds of threats as well. It's a completely chainable quick effect that just really hurts your opponent. It's a very difficult card to get over, and the fact that, again, you're using Mithrilium as material and you're not losing presence because she floats into another monster means you can continue doing some really nasty stuff on your turn, because now you could fuse your extra Metalfoe monster with the card you stole from your opponent, and you basically have this really nice controlling game. Then, if you want, you can even convert the Alkahest and the Alkahest into another Mithrilium, and then just recycle the Alkahest, keep doing that setup every single turn, make it so your opponent can never really get rid of these cards, and you just keep interrupting your opponent in the process. So we already talked about how the Metalfoes engine for consistency is pretty much 3 of every Metalfoe monster and then 1 of each of the spells and traps, which you can reliably recycle with the Mithrilium. But it's time to flesh out the deck. So we're playing the standard 2 Painful Decision and 1 Luster Pendulum. So essentially, Painful Decision lets you go and take a level 4 or lower monster. So that's your Steel and your Silvered and your Gold Driver, and send one from your deck to the grave to add a same card of that name from your deck to your hand. So this is basically just to make sure you always have a Metalfoe ready to go. It's basically just a rota for the deck. It does have a restriction of once per turn. That's why I like sticking with the 2. Some people do like 3, but I do think 2 is the right choice to avoid dead drawing any cards, because yeah, you could pop things, but you really don't want to if you don't have to. And you know, the probability of drawing both of your 2 copies is so much less than anything else. So we're going to do that. 1 Luster Pendulum, pretty much. This guy lets you go for your Ignister, which is the best thing of removal ever. Just shuffle your opponent's card without targeting. It's so good, and it's just such a powerful choice. I mean, this is a solid monster to go into. You do get to go and pop your Pendulum monster and get an extra copy. I guess that allows you to deck then. It's not as useful now because you can't go and Pendulum everything back, but really just having access to Ignister, I think, is what makes this card ideal, and it's a Pendulum monster that you can continuously use for summoning Mithrilium as well. So we're doing that. Because you have combination, remember, if you pop this card, you get to go and search any Metalfoe. So we're playing 3 Archfiend Eccentric and 3 MST. So Eccentric basically lets you go, and if you scale her, she becomes a mix of Scrap Dragon and MST. So you basically go and kill herself and 1 spell or trap on the field. So that lets you clear your opponent's floodgates and stuff. But you can also clear Metalfoe's combination and get a free search, turning this card into a Rhoda and making sure your hand doesn't brick. This has saved me so many times. It's just such an important piece, to the point that I actually play 3 Mystical Space Typhoons as well. And the reason I said Eccentric priority, then MST, is because Eccentric does serve as a pendulum monster for fusion summoning. For Mithrilium, you can use this as an exiled force and essentially just go, I have this from Goats. So, like, you know, you can go pop your opponent's monster using the Archfiend Eccentric. So it's a lot more of a useful card, in my opinion. That's why we go and do that. MST is still nice because you could use it to, like, chain and get rid of, like, Imperial Order or, like, an anti-spell fragrance and stuff. So, like, it gives you that type of removal as well. It lets you out Solemn Strike fairly easily as well. So, like, overall, I do think both sets of 3 is something that I ended up finding beneficial overall, just because it lets you make better use of combination, which again, you can set that at any time you have one of these spell and trap removal pieces, and then just continue to search through your deck. Then this is actually something I'm taking from Billy Break, the master here, but essentially we're playing 3 Summoner's Art, which lets you go and search your Volflame, but it also lets you go and search your Clayfort Scout and Monolith. So you only need 1 of each. Scout lets you search Monolith, and you can even go, so like, draw any of these, you're going to get your Monolith as well. You pop your Scout, and then you're able to Pendulum summon your Monolith from your hand and the Scout from your extra deck. Guess what? They're both level 5 machines. That lets you go for Cyber Dragon Nova and then Infinity, all off of just having Scout and access to 2 Metalfoes cards that you have as scale 1 and 8. That happens so often. Pretty much every time you draw a Summoner's Art or a Scout, you're going to have that because we're playing so many Metalfoes monsters. So, you know, 1 card Cyber Dragon Infinity, your opponent's going to have a lot of trouble dealing with this because you can negate a card effect once per turn, and you can even steal your opponent's monsters to help power it up and keep it alive. So it's really ridiculous. The fact that you have cross searchability for your Metalfoe Volflame as well makes this card not a gimmick at all. Like, this is just, I'm so glad they reprinted these cards as supers, because to be completely honest, it's just one of those things where you probably should be playing it for the extra reach that it gives your strategy. And it became even stronger with the limitation to 1 extra deck monster, because I think Infinity is easily a card worth having that 1 zone. And then, finally for the main, we're playing Rescue Rabbit, which lets you obviously go for your extra deck toolbox. So for that purpose, we're playing a rank 3 for just, generic removal, really. We're playing the Utopia package because that lets you get over stuff as well. And then that's really it in terms of that. But you can use this to help bring out fusion materials. You can use them for the link monsters that I'll get to in just a moment as well. And essentially, Rescue Rabbit's just an all-around good card. It's essentially like Painful Decision, and then you have to grab the same card. So just pay attention. If you Painful Decision for one, you're basically choosing the least useful monster in terms of Rescue Rabbit in case you draw that. So, or if you draw Rescue Rabbit first, you're trying to make sure that you have Painful Decision be able to fetch you the scales that you want later. So just think about, that. It's not a ton to think ahead of, but still something important to keep in mind, I think. And then, yeah, it'll serve you well as a good utility card. We're playing, now it's pretty standard, triple Baboon as well. This basically lets you get rid of any dead cards, and in the process, you basically pop Baboon, and that lets you summon 2 more. Then each of these has a draw effect when it's summoned in any way, so you basically get to go and draw a card, return a card. So if you draw extra copies of like the spells and traps, just throw them back in your deck, get other cards instead. You're able to go and, if you pop 1 Baboon with a Metalfoes effect, you get to go and overlay the 2 of those for a Phantom Knights as well, so that's pretty cool. And, since Baboon's free and you don't want to block up your extra zone, you could even just pop Breaksword himself to pop one of your opponent's threats and then continue and fusion summon into that zone. So I think Baboon's awesome. I don't know if it's really worth playing any other things because you're playing Baboon necessarily. But I mean, there are some other risks you're able to take because Baboon lets you shuffle things back, if that makes sense. But I end up just playing the Baboons, nothing else. And finally, in the main, we play 3 copies of Draconet. So usually you play this with Bitron. Essentially, everyone describes this as Tour Guide from the Underworld for Cyberse monsters, which is the new type. I agree. When you normal summon this, you could special summon a level 2 or lower normal monster from your deck in defense position. So the cool thing is, you go Draconet, you normally go for like a Bitron, which is a level 2 Cyberse, or a Galaxy Serpent, which is that tuner monster. But in this deck, don't forget, we already play Steelin, and that's one of the reasons I didn't drop it in this variant of the deck. You just summon a Steelin. This is a vanilla, and that means you could turn this thing into a copy of your Link Spider, and then I guess it goes into the zone up here. But now you have 2 Cyberse monsters. If you really got like another Link Spider up here by a vanilla, right, then you can actually go and turn the 2 of these into like a Honeybot and start doing crazy stuff as well. So I do play the 2 Link Spiders and 1 Honeybot here just for that purpose. And Link Spider is really cool too because it lets you go once per turn special summon a vanilla level 4 or lower from your hand to the zone this card points to. So you basically go, and if you were to Draconet and then special summon Steelin, you can turn Steelin into a Link Spider. So Steelin goes in your extra deck face up. Now Link Spider lets you summon any vanilla you have in your hand. So if you just throw like whatever other vanilla monster, so let's say you drew like a Silvered, you summon this, guess what? Now you can turn Silvered into a Link Spider, and then you go and turn this thing into the Honeybot. So like that's how that combo sequence works. You basically turn your vanillas and use Link Spider's effect to bring out Honeybot, and Honeybot has the ability, you have these 2 zones are now open, and neither player can target the cards that are pointing to this card, and they can't be destroyed by battle. So imagine if you summon your Alcahest in that spot, and your opponent isn't even allowed to go and negate its effect. Or if you have like a Mithrilium, your opponent can't stop you like with an effect failure or something when you go and you try and bounce one of their cards away. Like it just becomes insane when you're able to do this. It's not mandatory because as I showed you, if you're able to go Mithrilium and turn it into Alcahest, you get a lot of value while interrupting your opponent's limited zones, and that's still really good. Steal your opponent's Link monster or whatever, and they can't really do a ton with that. But the fact that Link Spider is just so easy to play off of just 3 copies of Draconet and the Steelin you're already playing in your deck, that's what really got me excited about Metalfoes in the context of Pendulum Summoning. Like, it's just so cool how much you can do by throwing in 3 Link monsters, 3 Draconet, and that's all you need. You don't have to go and dedicate anything else beyond that. But, I mean, this is just something I've been playing around with. So far, I have not been disappointed by this little engine here at all. Definitely something I recommend you guys try out if you're looking to play Metalfoes at least. Doesn't work with every Pendulum deck, obviously, because you need to have, you need to have vanillas for Link Spider to really work well, but definitely take advantage of that synergy. And then finally, I talked about these two fusions here. You're playing 3 Mithrilium because if you get your 1 striked or whatever, you want to make sure you always have more to summon because this is your main card. Since it lets you search, or I guess return your other cards, and then you can search them back, you basically only need 1 copy of your other fusions as well. So Adamante is in here because it's just a generic 25. You can use any monster with 2500 or less attack. So if you steal something with Alcahest, you use that to summon Adamante, and then you can continue doing stuff with that. That's really why it's here. And then Ori Calc is awesome because it's a level 8, which means if you have combination up, you summon your Mithrilium back, again, to your main monster zone. And then it's got 2800 attack, only needs 2 Metalfoes monsters, which is really easy to fulfill, and then pretty much you do double piercing damage to your opponent's monsters, which is insane. It can end games out of nowhere, and if it ends up being sent to the graveyard, either because your opponent killed it through some reason, sent it through some crazy stuff like Dark End Dragon, or if you just fusion with this guy too, like Mithrilium, you get value out of it because you can pop 1 card on the field as well. So this has pretty much been my standard. Like I like using this set of Metalfoes. I know some people like different ratios of things as well, but I always found this is sufficient. You can try Crimsonite, but with the addition of the Link monsters, I just felt, it's too important to play these guys to really be worth playing Crimsonite. He's basically just like a 3000 attack and defender. You need 2 monsters that have 3000 or less attack. It's like, you could do it. It might get you extra use out of the Alcahest, but realistically, I think Adamante is fine for that regard. And yeah, I've just liked these ratios for everything there. If you watched the video in its entirety, thanks. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing me put this deck together as much as I did actually testing out a Pendulum deck of all things in the new Link era. So we're going to go ahead and start with the alphabetical profile, but essentially we are playing, 3 of every Metalfoe monster, and then 1 of each of the spell and traps, and then some tech choices here and there. So we have triple Gold Driver, triple Silvered, triple Steelin, and triple Volflame. Have the Qli engine of just Scout and Monolith, triple Bismugear, triple Archfiend Eccentric, 1 Luster Pendulum, triple Baboon, 3 of the new Draconet card, Rescue Rabbit. Spells and traps, we have 1 of each of the fusions, triple MST, double Painful Decision, triple Summoner's Art, and 1 of each of the traps, combination, and counter. So fairly simple for the main, just some interesting tech choices here and there. And then for our extra deck, our lone synchro is a single Ignister Prominence, the Blasting Drago Slayer. Then for Xyz, we have a rank 3 in Phantom Knights of Breaksword, a rank 4 in Utopia, and of course the Lightning, which is the whole point of that. We have Cyber Dragon Nova in Infinity, which is for our Qli forts. And then for our fusion monsters, we have 1 Alcahest, 1 Adamante, triple Mithrilium to recycle everything pretty much in 1 Ori Calc. And then for Link monsters, we play a pair of Link Spiders because of all the vanillas in the deck, plus a Honey Bot that you can make off of a Link Spider and like Draconet and stuff as well.
That's the end of the video. If you enjoyed, please like it so we can share it with as many other people who may enjoy it as well. If you want to see more of this series, you can click the annotation you see on the right, or if you just want to see the last video I did, click the annotation on the left. And if you really liked what you saw today, then I invite you to check out the channel icon in the middle to subscribe to JDGaming for more weekly videos. Thanks guys, this is JDGaming, hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.